Secretary speaking with regard to the notice for invitation of auction. So let's just cut into that.
Are proposed to be held on 29 September 2016. This is in line with what we've been saying, that the auctions are on track for being held in September. The other important milestones as far as the NIA is concerned are the pre-bid conference is proposed to be held on the 13th of August, wherein the various elements of the NIA will be discussed in detail, and the interministerial committee to supervise the auctions will interact with the bidders, prospective bidders, experts, others, and seek their comments and provide clarifications, etc., as desired on various articles and sections of the NIA. Most of you are aware of most of the important elements of the rules for auctions which are showcased in the NIA, so I'll not go into those again. I'll just highlight some of the things, some of the major things. One is that the total amount of spectrum that is proposed to be auctioned is in 126 offerings. 126 offerings, 2,354.55 megahertz. 2,354.55 megahertz. This includes the spectrum in the TRI recommendations and also the spectrum that has become available for auction through the harmonization process that we've been pursuing for the last 4 or 5 months. As you would remember that harmonization has been a demand of the industry for a long time, and we've been able to harmonize spectrum in the 1800 and the 800 megahertz bands, which has given us an additional amount of 197 megahertz and about 37.5 megahertz in the 1800 and 800 megahertz bands respectively. 197 megahertz and 37.5 megahertz respectively. 1800 and 37.5 in 800 megahertz band. So this will put an additional 234.5 megahertz at reserve price valued at about 27,000 crores. The amount of spectrum being put to auction is more than in any of the previous auctions, and we believe that this and the fact that we are proposing to auction spectrum in 700, 800, 900, 1800, 2100, 2300, 2500, 7 bands will give an opportunity to bidders, both existing and prospective new bidders, to acquire chunks of spectrum which can enable them to provide good quality of services as per international benchmarks. And the issue of spectrum fragmentation, which has dogged the telecom sector for the last many years, will be a thing of the past. Coming to some of the other parameters which are there in the NIA, the spectrum usage charge, as you know, is 3% for spectrum, new spectrum being auctioned. This is lower than the 5% which was there in the 2015 auction. Overall, the weighted average formula for spectrum, all spectrum, including 2300, 2500, with a floor for the revenue being paid in this year, as well as 3%, both floors, 2 floors, which the cabinet approved last week, will be the spectrum usage charge formula. The payment option would be both the choice of upfront and installments. In case of spectrum below 1 gigahertz, 25% of the amount will have to be paid upfront by bidders who opt for a deferred payment plan, whereas for spectrum above 1 gigahertz, that is for 1800, 2100, 2300 and 2500 megahertz blocks, the upfront payment would be 50%. The installments would be the same as in the system of installments would be the same as in previous auction, the second installment becoming due on the third anniversary of the initial payment. One new and I would say bidder-friendly measure that figures in the NIA for the first time since auctions began is related to the assignment of spectrum. The government is committing that spectrum won in the auction would be assigned within 30 days of the last day of the upfront payment made for spectrum. 30 calendar days. Within 30 calendar days of the last day for upfront payment.
Of last day.
Say the auction gets over on day 0, the last. Okay, sorry. Even better, even more liberal, 30 days from the date of making payments. So if a person were to make a payment, and there's, as you know, 10 days time for making a payment, if he makes a payment, it is the spectrum won in the auction will be assigned within 30 calendar days of that day. This, as you know, has been a problem in certain auctions where spectrum assignment has taken as much as 4 to 5 months, and with this, this is a measure to facilitate further ease of doing business, and is part of the ongoing reform agenda of the Department of Telecom. Other changes and differences, again in the area of improving the ease of doing business and making the auction more bidder friendly, is that for those bidders whose net worth is taken into account as part of the eligibility, the lock-in period will now be 1 year instead of that in the previous auctions, which was 2 years beyond the rollout obligation. So instead of about 7 years, the lock-in period of equity has been reduced to 1 year. As far as rollout obligation is concerned, also it is more liberalized than it has been in previous auctions. A bidder who is the rollout obligation would be considered as complete if district headquarters and block headquarters are covered by use of any technology in any band. In the sense that if for district headquarter, block headquarter is covered through one technology, it does not have to be done through other bands, through other technology. Also, as far as checking the rollout obligation is concerned, for 90% self-certification will be permitted, and only in case of up to 10% verifications will be made by the term set. Let me just finish. The frequency allocation process, as you know, the auction is in 2 parts. First is the bid, and then is the second stage for frequency assignment. It has been further streamlined to provide a maximum quantity of contiguous spectrum. The government is committed to make sure that spectrum is used as efficiently as possible. One of the reasons for that is that we allocate it through auctions. The second is we harmonize it, and we will do it from time to time. And the third is that in the frequency assignment process, we will not put constraints which prevent winners from getting large chunks of contiguous spectrum. I'll come back. The interest, I don't have too much more to say. The interest rate on deferred payments is as is linked to the prime lending rate, and in this case, this year, it will be 9.3% compared to 10% in the, sorry, is linked to the base rate. Sorry, the payment interest rate is linked to the base rate, and it will be 9.3% this year compared to 10% which was there in the 2015 auction. Okay. Just to conclude, large chunks of spectrum are being put on, large chunks of spectrum are being put on auction, which should help remove fragmentation, improve quality of services, and the rules have been made as bidder friendly as possible.
So back of the envelope calculation, what is the amount that the government is looking to get from this auction, given that additional spectrum has also been put for sale? On reserve price, how much is the price?
You know the reserve price of spectrum which TRAI has recommended. The additional spectrum is 27,000 crores, and it is going to be a transparent auction through market-determined price. So we will find out very soon as to what it would not be proper for me to speculate and suggest a figure.
So, but what are your expectations? Because previously we've seen that the bids have obviously gone beyond what the government has proposed as the reserve price. So, do you expect similar bidding in this round, and especially in the 700 megahertz? Because the industry has said that the prices are very high, and there will not be much participation. What is your expectation?
All of us are aware of the issues raised by industry and the discourse around.
All right, the notice inviting applications, or the NIA, pretty much the official kickoff to the Spectrum 27 F517 auctions has started today. The auctions will be conducted on the 29th of September. So we've got about a month and a half to go. The positives in this auction will be that there is a very large amount of spectrum which will be auctioned at 2,354.5 megahertz. Over and above that, I think there is going to be a harmonized spectrum which equals 234.5 megahertz. So net, the quantity of spectrum which is up for auctioning is very large, and this could potentially reduce the bidding pressure that we have on telecom operators. Remember, this auction is going to be different in many ways. One is the very large size, which will help the government rake in also a significant amount of money. So the supply is very high. Secondly, telecom operators, unlike in the past auctions, do not have the pressure of renewal spectrum. Remember, in the last two auctions, nearly 61% of the amount that was bought, the spectrum that was bought, was purely on account of renewal. If you didn't buy that spectrum, you will not be able to continue with your operations. This time, that renewal pressure is not there on the telecom operators. And also, many of the large players just have to plug in a couple of their 3G and 4G gaps. So that would raise the hope that bidding this time would be fairly rational from the telecom operators. Some more details. Spectrum usage charge on expected lines has been set at 3%. This has been known for a while. They will be using the weighted average method of calculation. For less than 1 gigahertz of spectrum, I think the upfront payment is going to be 25%. For over and above that, it will be a 50% upfront payment on bands 1800, 21, 23, as well as 2500 megahertz. The other positive is that assignment will be done in only 30 days. In the past, there have been, there's been a lot of tussle because assignment of spectrum after bidding and winning for it has taken a couple of months.